More unrest in the West Bank. Thousands are in mourning after Israeli forces kill 6 people in Nablus. Is Israel targeting terrorists or punishing Palestinians? I'm Andrea Sankey. Today's newsmaker is Israel's Nablus operation. "2022 has been a horrific year for Palestinians. According to the United Nations, it's been the deadliest in the West Bank since 2008. In just the past 10 months, Israeli forces have killed more than 100 people there, 6 of them during its latest assault on the city of Nablus. Israel says it's been targeting terrorists from a group called the Lion's Den and is adamant that the assault on Nablus will continue.
After a night of operational activity, I want to say that our goal was and remains to strike hard and continuously at terrorists and those who dispatch them in Jenin and Nablus.
In response, a spokesperson for Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas urged the international community to intervene. He called on the United States to pressure Israel to stop the raids before the situation spirals even further out of control.
This Israeli escalation is crossing all the red lines with the Palestinians. They have killed 6 people in 12 hours in Nablus, and we urge the American administration to put enough pressure and serious pressure on this Israeli government to stop this escalation.
For some time now, Israel's actions have been scrutinized by human rights groups. On Tuesday, Amnesty International called for a thorough investigation into the August assault on Gaza, accusing Israel of war crimes. Let's take a closer look at the report.
According to the human rights group's report, Israel appears to have been deliberately targeting civilians during its 3-day offensive on Gaza in August. During the assault, 33 Palestinians were killed, 17 of them civilians. That included 22-year-old Duniana Al-Amour. Amnesty International says it believes Israeli forces deliberately struck her home, killing her and injuring her mother and sister. A strike on the Fallujah cemetery killed 5 children. One of them was 15-year-old Nadhami Abu Karsh, who, according to Amnesty, was only visiting his mother's grave. The report also highlights what it believes may constitute unlawful attacks by Palestinian factions. An unguided rocket fired by a Palestinian armed group killed 7 civilians in the Jabalia refugee camp. Amnesty has called on the International Criminal Court to investigate these attacks as war crimes, saying the victims' families deserve justice and reparations. Following the release of the report, the body's Secretary-General Agnes Callamard tweeted,
"These violations were perpetrated in the context of Israel's ongoing illegal blockade on Gaza, which is a key tool of its apartheid regime. Palestinians in Gaza are dominated, oppressed and segregated, trapped in a 15-year nightmare with unlawful attacks and humanitarian crisis."
So while Amnesty investigates what happened in Gaza, the Nablus operation continues. And joining me now to talk more about what's behind that and where all of this leaves the ever-growing tensions between Israelis and Palestinians are, from Ramallah, writer and political analyst and former Palestinian Authority spokesperson Nour Odeh. Also in Ramallah is the Secretary General of the Palestinian National Initiative, Mustafa Barghouti. And from Naples, we have Israel's former Deputy Foreign Minister, Danny Ayalon. He was also Israel's ambassador to the United States. Thanks all so much for being with us. Let's first then talk about why these raids have happened. Danny Ayalon, Israel has identified the Lion's Den as a terrorist group that they've vowed to eliminate. So they've gone after those targets. Does that sum up most of the equation here?
Yes, Andrea, pretty much, except I would say one more important thing, which is this Lion's Den is also, I would say, defined by the Palestinian Authority as an outlawed organization, and they are actually going after them. And one of the leaders of this Lion Den's organization presently is incarcerated by Palestinian Authority. Others are also being sought after. And it is only those which are very active. And I must say, just in the last 3 weeks, 3 Israelis have been killed by them, 4 more were injured. They are outlaws, they're criminals, and they're supported by Hamas and Iran. So they are not only after Israelis, but they're also after undermining the Palestinian Authority. So Israel has been calling for the Palestinian Authority to cooperate together and put those guys in behind bars, and then Israel would not have to take any action against. We waited, more than 3 weeks until we could not wait anymore because we saw how they gathered momentum, they gathered experience, and became much more aggressive. So hopefully, and this is Israel's first priority, is that the Palestinian Authority will do what they have committed to do, what is their obligation to do, not just for Israel's sake, but most importantly for them, for Palestinians' sake, and for the Palestinian Authority stability.
Okay. Nour, let me ask you, has the Palestinian Authority failed to take enough action against Lion's Den militants or activists?
I don't think it's the business of the Palestinian Authority to take any action against the Lion's Den. The Lion's Den is a group of young Palestinians from different factions who have responded to the increasing systematic violence of the Israeli occupation. The Palestinian Authority, to have legitimacy, must not do Israel's bidding and must not assist Israel in persecuting the Palestinians and going after Palestinian activists. Well, no matter the discussion around what kind of resistance Palestinians should engage in against the Israeli occupation is a Palestinian matter that should be done amongst Palestinians.
Okay, then quickly, Nour, why has
Lion's
Den been outlawed by the PA itself?
That's news to me. I haven't seen that they've been outlawed. I know that at least one of their members is in Palestinian custody, but I also know that a Palestinian court has in fact cleared him of all charges and ordered his release, and he is being held illegally at this point by Palestinian security forces. That's the information that I have that I can corroborate. But that there was a declaration of this group being illegal, this is news to me. I haven't seen anything to that effect.
You don't think, though, as Danny was saying, you don't think they undermine the Palestinian Authority?
Well, the Palestinian Authority should be doing the Palestinian people's bidding, and they should be confronting the Israeli occupation, and they should not be normalizing the raids of the occupation forces or the actions of the Israeli occupation. This has been the deadliest year in many years.
Right.
The number of Palestinian children killed at the hands of Israeli soldiers, the number of Palestinians killed, of homes demolished, is at an all-time high in the past 5 or 6 years.
16 years, actually.
16, sorry. That's what the priority of the authority should be, and not to lay siege or to go after a group of Palestinians who are attacking Israeli settlements or Israeli soldiers.
Okay.
The root of the problem is the presence of those soldiers on Palestinian land, the illegal presence of those settlers on occupied Palestinian land, and not the resistance of Palestinians to that occupation.
Okay, Mustafa Barghouti, Israel conducts regular raids on areas where they say militants are active. But why have these killings in Nablus garnered seemingly more outrage?
Well, first of all, you're right. The Israeli army continues to oppress Palestinians, and they conduct terrorist acts against Palestinians. Since the beginning of this year, 183 Palestinians have been victims of Israeli terrorism, including 42 children. And I have a very important issue here with the question of terminology. For Israelis, anybody who opposes Israeli occupation and Israeli apartheid system is described as terrorist or provocateur or anti-Semitic if he is not Palestinian. And if he is a Jewish person supporting peace, real peace, to end occupation, he would be called or she would be called self-hating Jew. I think this terminology is completely wrong. In Ukraine, those who fight against occupation are described as freedom fighters. And in many other countries, those who struggle against the oppression are described as freedom fighters, and the Palestinians are freedom fighters. They are not terrorists. They don't attack women, they don't attack children, they attack Israeli occupying forces. And that's why they would be classified as freedom fighters in any international terminology. On the other hand, let me say that this whole situation is not new. We've been through two intifadas before, and probably we are now getting into the third one. And the main reason and cause for that is the longest military occupation in modern history. 55 years of Israeli occupation of the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, as well as Gaza. The Israelis would even deny the presence of occupation. I mean, although the whole world is saying this is occupation. And this is complicated further by a system of apartheid, a much worse apartheid than what prevailed in South Africa.
Okay.
That is why we have a problem. That is the problem.
Okay. Danny, let me come back to you. And on another track here, you know, you said if this government hadn't conducted these raids, Netanyahu and the opposition would have used that to say they are failing to defend the country. So part of this really is political.
Well, I would say the fact that Israel is, upcoming elections is just in about less than a week. Certainly, it doesn't allow much leeway for the Israeli government to be more lenient, although it's also a matter of life and death. So probably in any case, they would have taken the same measures as they do now, but there is a little bit of additional pressure on the government, especially when the opposition under the authority or under Bibi Netanyahu is accusing the government of actually not being strong enough on security. And here I would like to say, for Mr. Barghouti, I mean, I can respect his views, but I totally do not agree with them, because freedom fighters do not don't go after babies. They do not kill civilians.
They do not
just shoot at anything that moves on the roads, on the one hand. Secondly, if they were freedom fighters, why the Palestinian Authority wants to put them in jail? Also, Israel, if you want to talk about the action, Israel does not act in Hebron, does not act in Ramallah, does not act in Kalkilia, in other Palestinian towns where there is no terror coming out of it. So the only two places right now which are problematic are Nablus and Jenin, which are strongholds of the Muslim Brotherhoods supported by Hamas and Iran. That's the problem.
Danny, let me ask you this. I mean, if you can give us an indication of how much the Israeli public, though, actually does support this action, and if they worry that it could backfire, especially when they see what's happening now on the streets of the West Bank.
Well, the Israeli government, the Israeli public very much supports it, because they know that if these terrorists will not be taken at their shelters, whether it's in the Kasbah, in Nablus, or other safe houses that they turn into, I would say, into strongholds, then they would come and kill Israelis in Tel Aviv, in Ramat Gan, in Jerusalem, as they have been doing. And I know all the time the Palestinians go back to the issue, the root cause of occupation. For that, I would say one thing. Israel was willing and is still willing to negotiate on a
but
fair
you do have occupation, don't you?
Don't you? But we do not have a Palestinian authority that is ready to make the concessions that are necessary in order to forward. And last point I want to make, Andrea, is don't take it from Israel. Take it from the other countries in the region. The other countries in the region, whether it's Egypt, whether it's Jordan, whether it's the Emirates, whether it's Bahrain, these are all Arab countries. Their solidarity is with the Palestinian people, but they are fed up with the Palestinian Authority intransigence, and they decided not to give the leaders of the Palestinians the veto power to actually keep this the entire region of the Middle East behind the world. We have to move forward with cooperation, economic cooperation, sustainability, food security. This is what we need. And if we had a real serious Palestinian leaders,
Okay.
then Israel will be more than willing to move forward with lots of concessions.
Nour, I can see you find something in that laughable. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know where to start, but I would suggest to Danny to update his talking points because they seem to be stuck in and around the year 2000. The fact is, the current Israeli government and the opposition in Israel not only reject negotiations with the Palestinians, they reject the notion of Palestinian statehood. That is a declared fact, Danny. Let's not discuss facts that are declared and out there. The Israeli left, if there is such a thing right now, is not even predicted or is feared not to make the threshold. The mainstream in Israel right now rejects the idea of Palestinian statehood, does not want to go to negotiations, does not want to see a Palestinian state. We've heard that from Benny Gantz, we've heard that from Yair Lapid, we've heard that from Naftali Bennett, we've heard that from Netanyahu. That's where Israel is. Israel does not want to see a Palestinian state, and Israel wants to maintain a veto power on the Palestinians exercising what is their right, which is to be independent from foreign military domination. That is entrenched by an apartheid regime. This is what your government, this is what your taxes are paying for, Danny, and this is what you're whitewashing right now. This is the hasbara right now that you're dishing out is excusing all of that. Okay. And as far as Israel only operating in Nablus, I think it's very important to point out to the viewers, especially those who haven't visited Palestine. The daily reality of occupation is a reality of daily violence. Okay, everybody in Palestine, whether they're living in Ramallah or Bethlehem or Hebron or Nablus or in Gaza, experiences structured violence by the occupation in different ways. So whether it's my child who wants to go to university in a different city and having to worry about what the Israeli soldier at the checkpoint will do, or whether it's merchandise that I'm waiting for to cross from one city to the other, and to wonder whether it will go through the Israeli checkpoint and the Israeli security clearances between Palestinian cities. Occupation is a daily reality of violence. It is not, that violence is not restricted to raids and bullets and missiles raining down on civilian neighborhoods in violation of international law.
Okay, Mustafa, quickly, let me get your thoughts. Before we have very limited time left, and there are a few other issues I want to get to, but go ahead. I saw you had a response.
Well, I don't want to call Danny a liar, but I would call him a misinformed person. And I explain why. First of all, this group in Nablus did not kill any baby and did not attack any child and did not attack any civilian. Second, it is the Israeli army, and you can look at the New York Times, you can look at the issue of the New York Times at the time, which published the photos of 64 Palestinian children who were killed in Gaza by the Israeli air. So those who kill children are practically the Israeli army and the Israeli forces. And we are against killing any civilian. We are for the respect of international law and international humanitarian law. You also said that the Israeli army does not invade other cities. It's not true. Most recently, the Israeli army invaded even Ramallah several times. Ramallah, the center of the Palestinian Authority. And most recently, they came in and closed down 6 Palestinian non-governmental organizations, civil society groups that work in health and agriculture and other places. And these organizations are registered by the Palestinian Authority. So if Israel comes in and closes down any organization registered with the Palestinian Authority, that means the Palestinian Authority itself is under military occupation. And that is the reality. You keep talking about Palestinian security forces arresting these people. What I heard yesterday and today is that the Palestinian security apparatus is very proud for the fact that it stood up to the Israeli army when it invaded Nablus and shared resistance with these guys. So we understand the policy and the approach of divide and conquer.
Okay.
Trying to put the Palestinian Authority in confrontation with its own people will not help anybody. The main question goes back to the very simple fact.
Okay.
How can we have peace if we have occupation?
Occupation.
And that Israelis are unable to solve.
There are other issues at play as well. And Danny, I have to address this with you because we are seeing a lot of reports right now about the rise in Israeli They're calling it settler violence. So many before had said that these settlers kind of exist on the margins of Israel, yet more and more their actions seem to be accepted. Why do they feel so empowered right now?
Well, I hope they're not, because everything which is going against the law should be taken care of. The Israeli government maybe should do more, and I am not apprehensive here to admit that in case of violations, anyone, whether it's a Jew or Arab or Palestinian or Israeli, should be treated the same. However, it's a matter, Andrea, of proportion. If you look, Israeli violence, by settlers, which is again, it's morally apprehensive, but maybe you will see one issue of violence by Jews against Arabs to about 95 done by Arabs against Jews, and also the Arabs, including this what we're discussing here, the Lion's Den, they're using arms and mortars and explosives. The Israeli settlers, what they're doing is they're using, and I don't condone that. Whether it's rocks or Nablus, it should not be. And yes, Israeli government can do more. I hope it will do more. But this is inexcusable for the Palestinians to continue the terror. They always talk about this occupation. Why is this occupation? The occupation is because of, one, the terrorism which continues, and secondly, because of the
For the love
refusal,
of God, Daddy. Come
of the
on.
Palestinian Authority to recognize
Come
Israel
on.
as what it is. That's it.
Okay, we're down to our last 3 minutes. Nour, here is the sad reality. In spite of whatever reasons or causes, we are where we are now. And Israel now is probably somewhat right to believe that all the anger and resentment that exists among Palestinians is a threat to Israel's existence. So at this point, well, that's how they feel. Is there, for whatever causes, I know that it might not be justified because if you say they caused it themselves, you can argue that point, but we are, as I said, we are where we are. So is there any realistic chance now for peaceful coexistence, even as two separate states?
Two separate states? Absolutely. Absolutely. But so long as Israel can get away with being a violent colonial oppressor of the Palestinians and to give itself the right to excuse its occupation and to condition Palestinian freedom on acquiescence and on providing security to the occupier, then peace is a very distant possibility. The settler colonial power throughout history does not get to dictate to the occupied, to the oppressed, the terms of their emancipation. Palestinians have a right to be free, free of oppression, free of occupation, unconditionally. This is an inalienable right, and it's not up to anybody to condition that right. The problem or the fact that this reality persists is because Israel can get away with it. It can get away with the misinformation, but more importantly, it gets away with impunity, with lack of accountability. And that is why you will see more and more phenomena, not just like the Lion's Den, but overall, the Palestinian sentiment of being fed up with this daily reality of oppression, of injustice, is not going to go away. This is a historic fact. No people on earth will accept to be subjugated, and the Palestinians are no different.
Okay, Mustafa, just a minute and a half. I mean, how could they be convinced, let me put it that way, that they could actually be safe then with an independent state of Palestine on their border?
Well, they have to choose. Either they accept the risk of peace or they continue the risk of war. And in my opinion, the risk of peace can be if they accept that to end the occupation, allow us to have an independent state. But if they are killing the two-state solution, which has been killed already, probably, the only way out of this situation is that we live together in one state with democratic rights, full democratic rights for everybody. One vote for one man, one woman, one vote. And we can coexist together in one democratic state instead of the reality of today, which is one apartheid state.
Okay.
They tend frequently to say this is a conflict, but it's not a conflict. It's one side occupying the other, one side oppressing the other. But if we accept that it is a conflict, if it is a conflict, why, if the Israelis are allowed to use arms, why Palestinians are not allowed to use arms? This is the simple question that young people ask. So I am an advocate of nonviolence, but I'm telling you the best way out of this is ending occupation, ending the system of apartheid. If we don't have a state very soon, we will end up with one democratic state, whether they like it or not.
Mustafa Barghouti, that will have to be the final words. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of The Newsmakers. I'd like to thank all three of my panelists sincerely so much for being with us. Our viewers, of course, for tuning in as well. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.